Um, we really have to read all this. Oh, and I'm gonna make you read it. I'm sorry. We never have
I'm
to do
okay.
this at this county, state,
Um,
town.
so you're gonna, okay. Well, it is October 29th, 2025 at 4 o'clock, and this is a meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates, Standing Committee on Economic Affairs. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this virtual meeting of the Cape Cod Regional Government Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Economic Affairs will be conducted via remote means only in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public may watch the meeting through live real-time broadcast at www.youtube.com/user/Barnstable County. A public participation guide and meeting documents are available in advance at www.capecod.gov. The County of Barnstable does not discriminate in the administration of its programs or activities on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or other category protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws and regulations. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request. For more information or to file a complaint, please contact Justina Marchak, Barnstable County ADA Non-Discrimination Coordinator at JMARCZAK at capecod.gov. Call 508-375-6646 or visit www.capecod.gov. Members of the public may also attend the meeting remotely through Microsoft Teams, and that information is also available on the website.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining this meeting with such little advance notice. We'll start with a moment of silence to honor our troops and all those who are trying to save our country. Thank you. If anybody wants to do the Pledge of Allegiance with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All righty. May I have a roll call, please, Mr. Clerk?
All right, Madam Chair, bear with me, but I believe we've got Deputy Speaker Gasson,
Yes.
Chair Harder,
Yes.
and we have Delegate uh, Green here for Delegate Omen. Uh,
Here.
Delegate Ty
Here.
and Delegate Gallagher is also here, and we have one vacancy. So we have two alternates for two open spots for five altogether.
Thank you. All right, so why are we here? Quickly. I don't anticipate this taking too long, I hope, but as you know, Delegate Gesson, Delegate Warner, and Delegate Sampson and I have been drafting up these papers after all of the meetings so that we have a clear, concise paper to distribute to all the delegates and to the towns. So I just wanted to present the latest version so we can discuss it, make sure there any questions or concerns are addressed so that then we can distribute it to the delegates to be discussed at the full assembly. So I'm guessing Delegate Gesson would like to go first.
I'm happy to. I'm also happy, Doug Harder, to pull up the document, and then you can kind of take us through the bullet points or however else you want to do it. I'm not partial to any. I think my only note is it would probably be worthwhile, since these are recommendations for the committee after we discuss it and maybe even make changes, however else we go about it. My recommendation would be that the committee recommends something at the conclusion of this meeting with a vote. But beyond that, no preference.
Great. I think sharing your screen would be fabulous. Because
Do
then
it right
we're
now.
all on the same page, no pun intended.
It'll just take me a moment here.
Lately.
Just one. Too many files. Always. Everyone can see?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Yes, but if you could enlarge it, I mean, can we get full width there? Because the
yeah,
font is very
absolutely.
small.
We'll zoom in. Any better?
That's
Yeah,
great. Thank you.
That's good. So this is what we're hoping if you read the first paragraph, to explain how we came up with this information. And then we answered the basic questions that we were getting from everyone. So it's local control is the basic recommendation. The towns, we're not telling the towns what to do with the money. All we're saying is that if a town wants to participate in receiving this fee, the only restriction is that the money goes to housing. So other than that, local approval. First off, towns can decide whether or not they want to participate. Everybody clear and good with that? All right. The second one is just explaining how the towns would decide, town meeting, I'm assuming, and the council in Barnstable. And that way they know the town has buy-in since it's voted for by the people. So it's not the county shoving anything down anybody's throat. Is that good? Okay. So number 3, monetary distribution. Again, this is the money is collected by the Registry of Deeds. That money will go directly to the towns. If Orleans makes $1 million from this fee, that goes to Orleans. If Provincetown makes them 5 million, that goes to Provincetown. We don't equal it out. Each town gets their own money back, with the exception of we are asking for 10%, 3% to cover the extra expenses incurred by the Registry of Deeds, and then 7% to go to the county to create a regional year-round housing fund. And the purpose of that will be, there are things the county can do that are very hard for towns to do across borders. There are also things that the county might be able to act much quicker on than towns could. So that's why we're asking for the money. And I see Delegate Gessen can explain this better. Please.
Oh, not at all. You explained it great. I just want to hone in a little on the language we use because we wanted to be precise in the recommendation, and also, not purport to know something that we just don't know yet. So with this recommendation, the direct phrasing of it is, as Delegate Harder said, funds will be returned to the affordable or year-round housing trust of the town where the sale occurred. Point 2 is the money, towns get to decide, what percentage of their $1 million or whatever it is goes to their affordable housing trust, what percentage goes to their year-round housing trust. So we're not telling towns that they have to use the money in one way or another, as long as it goes into one of those two funds. which almost all communities are going to have. And the last and main point here is, we still think, we're answering a lot of big questions today about where this committee stands. But once we answer the big questions, which most of this memo is, there's still stuff we need to investigate. And that's really, the administration, how much is it going to cost to really administer this? And we're not going to be able to answer that until we get the registry of deeds in here, the county administrator in here, and have a kind of a collaborative effort at future meetings to hone in on some hard numbers. So the recommendation doesn't make a decision on that yet. The recommendation as it stands today, if the committee decides to, adopt it, is no more than 10% of the funds collected from each town will be retained to offset administrative costs and for regional housing initiatives, pending additional information on administrative cost estimates from the registry. So we think it's going to be that 3 and 7% breakdown, but so far, if we do vote on this, it's going to be just to say at least 90% of the money, if not more, is going to go back to the town, and whatever is retained by the county, which is going to be 10% or less, is going to cover all the administrative costs, plus leftover money is going to go towards regional housing stuff, which we talked about a little more, I think, in point 8 on the memo. I think that was helpful.
Thank you, Delegate Gessen. Delegate Green?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, there's been some pushback on this right from the beginning from my town, and the 10%. And I think that if we can have some analysis of this, that would really help. I mean, help all of us really understand what the situation is, how much money is generated with property sales in each one of the towns, how much of that is over $1 million. So people have a sense of, what numbers we're talking about. And we also have a sense of what we're thinking about as far as regional projects. And also making it equitable for the towns that are contributing, the most. So in other words, if there's a regional project and let's say Sandwich and Bourne are contributing the most, but Provincetown is the town that's benefiting the most. I mean, that's really not equitable. I mean, and I don't know what the breakdown is. Frankly, there's a lot of concern in my town what that breakdown is, and there's concern that that 10% could be a lot of money that's being siphoned away from what could go back to the towns, and that the towns, the other issue that was raised as well to me today in an email was that, and this has been said by others in my town. And in fact, I think one of my select board members made this comment about, adding another layer, another series of volunteers from the towns to, is that going to be burdensome for the towns when this, money could just go back to the towns? The towns could collaborate with the towns in the region. Let's say, our outer Cape towns could all collaborate together with a regional project, and it wouldn't need the administrative overhead of the county. And I know that we've heard from Senator Sear, and Senator Sear has said that he's not going to put forth the legislation unless we do something countywide. And at the same time too, I did want to, which I think is, I don't know whether we could have another sit down with him and talk with him about this, that there are concerns in the various towns. So those are really, the basic crux of the issues that the people in my town are raising. I have to say that I'm also getting a lot of support for this initiative in my town. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from people involved with housing for a long time in my town. So, I feel like we're on the right track. I think if we tighten up some of these things and we come up with something that's really equitable and people feel all around, at every town that it's equitable, that would be a real positive. Can I also
Great.
ask one other question though?
Sure.
It's about the seasonal communities thing. I think that that some of that might be moot if that's somebody made that comment at one point that it may allow this to
Yes.
happen. I don't even know. Where do we stand with that?
One of what's happening at the state level is that there is a method of this included in the expansion of the Seasonal Communities Act. There are also each town's individual home rule petitions. Then there will hopefully be our home rule petition. What we're basically doing is throwing all the spaghetti we have against the wall and hoping at least one will stick so that we can get this fee. So I mean, that's basically it to me.
Yeah.
Terry.
And what about the other just little sticking point is, for the county and the county administrator to come with us with, what are the administrative costs going to be for the county and LPEB and all the rest of the benefits? I mean,
Right.
we've
That's-
pushed back on that, so we should really be thinking about that too. Okay, thank you.
That's why number 3 is, as Dan said, we're not getting into the specific percentages and weeds because we need to talk to Administrator Dutton and we need to talk to the Registry of Deeds. So we will be doing that. We also, at some point, should probably talk to the Board of Commissioners and see what they think. Not that we need their approval to do this, but I think it would be nice if we could get them involved, make them part of the process. So, Delegate Gallagher.
Hello, thank you. My remarks would largely echo those of Delegate Green. Eastham has applied on its own. I've not been able to discuss at length the county's proposal with too many people in my town, but from the brief conversations I've been able to have, people have said, yeah, we're happy for the county to follow through on this and deal with the State House. And then with the caveat, as long as the county doesn't collect a fee. And I did say if the county incurs costs, the county should charge a fee. That's reasonable. But when I look at the language we're presenting here, no more than 10%, and for administrative costs and regional housing projects, people are going to react to that. 10% is a high number, especially if people read that as administrative fees alone. Fee for administrative fees should be on the order of 1% or perhaps 2%. And then we've covered a lot of vagueness with the idea of potential regional projects. I think it would be useful to present people with language that separated those into 2 things and maybe made clearer that the anticipated administrative costs would be, well, let's just say much less than 10%. Maybe we don't put a specific number, but maybe we get as specific as we can. And the people who are dealing with this are professionals. I'm sure that they can come up with an estimate that is more on the order of 1% or 2%. And then if we are in fact contemplating regional projects, and I think it's fair to see a lot of the projects that are now going up in Orleans, in Provincetown, in Eastham, these are actually regional projects because they reflect joint investment from multiple towns. And I think we could give people at least a little more detail about what regional projects are being contemplated. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Delegate Gessen.
No, I think all good points from Delegate Green and Delegate Gallagher, and it's a lot of stuff that we've heard from people that have come to the assembly with concerns from towns. It's the same thing I've heard from my town when I've talked to folks that really strongly advocated for Falmouth to create a transfer fee and send that home rule petition to the legislature. In bullet 8, we'll talk a little more about our thoughts on what I know Doug Green talked about a little bit on what that kind of allocation would look like and how it would be determined. But I'll kind of preview it now since it's integrated in what we're discussing here. The thought process is to look at the Homes Program and the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, which both consist of the same thing. They each have a board member, which is a volunteer appointed by the community that meet, I think, usually, I think for both boards quarterly, and just approve projects that come in front of them that meet certain criteria. And they create the criteria for it, towns apply, and they get voted up or down. And the thought process really is not, it's not going to be split 1/15 every single time, every single way. You're not going to get every town getting an identical percentage every year, but the idea is, Falmouth is embarking on a huge wastewater initiative this year. So the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund is going to give them a significant amount this year. Next year, when Wellfleet or Eastham or another town embarks on a big initiative to do with wastewater, the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund might fund them more that year. And by having each town have a voice at the table, one town, one vote, you're able to come up with compromises that share this massive amount of money with the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund on the brink of almost $250 million over the last decade. In an equitable way, because every town has a voice at the table. The thought process is pretty similar here, not to prescribe a specific initiative or a specific amount of money, but to say this isn't going to be decided by the assembly or by the county, but every town that adopts a transfer fee gets one town, one vote. And the only way you spend the money out of that pot of money that's regional is with the town approval of one town, one vote. So all the money can't go to, like, let's say Falmouth, because towns like Wellfleet and Eastham would obviously not go with that. So you're much more likely to see initiatives like, a regional program for rental assistance or good landlord project, or for workforce housing and partnering with employers. It's not that it's funding one big project in one town, but it's these regional initiatives that don't worry about town borders, because, individuals can benefit from them up and down the Cape. And I'd also say, if 10% is a lot of money, and it might be, it could be on the order of millions of dollars. Well, then 90% is 9 times more than a lot of money. So the towns are going to get the overwhelming part of the piece of the pie here. And the thought process is, especially if towns want to collaborate regionally anyway, which a lot of communities do, to avoid the step where we give money to towns and then ask back, for like the regional shared services office. Let's have a relatively small sliver already go to regional initiatives, and let the towns decide what those regional initiatives are. That's my thought on it. I think it's a good idea, but open to thoughts. And that's really why the language is soft here, where it says no more than 10%. No more than 10% could be 0%. And I think this is going to be the last thing we need to resolve. And the effort today, if we don't all agree on this, should probably be let's get rid of the big issues and keep these in the weeds one in committee to discuss further.
Thank you. Delegate Green, do you have something to say directly to that, or can it wait until we get to section 8 where we go more into detail about this?
Oh, no, I was just going to make a simple suggestion that maybe the language gets even more fuzzier here, and it says subject to analysis, so that we can, I think Delegate Gallagher's point about breaking into 2 separate bullet points maybe, and then saying for both of them, subject to analysis, so that, so the towns can understand that, we want to be fair and equitable, and we want to make sure that we understand what the numbers are now and what the projections are, and try to make it as fair as possible for each town.
Beautiful.
Is that fair?
That's a very good idea. All right. Shall we move on?
And
Oh,
I'll reshare the screen.
yeah, please. And while we're doing that, Dan, you may know, otherwise, we'll have to find out. I will ask someone who would know. Um, is will this fee be tax deductible?
Tax deductible. I have no idea. So you're saying if you pay this fee, would you be able to deduct the fact that you spent, let's say, $20,000 on a
Right.
I would assume, without giving anyone legal advice who might be listening to this, because I'm not qualified to do that, but I would very much assume that that would be more of a question for the tax that you're trying to deduct than a question for the fee we're creating. So, right, like federal taxes, state taxes, et cetera, might have very different rules dealing with how you treat an individual transfer fee. So it might not be a one size fits all answer.
Right. So we should put that into our things to discuss with the administration and the Registry of Deeds. Just in our heads, if not, but because I think Delegate Frederickson asked that question, and I thought, that's a really good question. All right, so what are we? So we're back to question 3. So I think we covered that until we get to section 8, correct?
Yes, and Delegate Harder and Delegate Green, I made a note right now here, and then I think before at the end of the meeting, once we talk about section 8 and in the context of everything else, we can talk about the exact language we want to move forward with, if we are going to recommend anything today. So
Great.
haven't forgotten it, made a note of it, and then we'll get back to it if that's okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. So number 4, just lists, all sorts of housing things, that the towns may or may not want to use the money for. And the only thing, did we take out I'm sorry, Delegate Gessen, did we take out the line saying it is not to go into the general fund? Where is that?
I think that was implied. That was up here in where the money goes. Ensuring transfer fees funds are spent on housing related policies.
Yeah, we need, I believe, I'll let other people weigh in on this, that I think, that we need to be really specific, because, town administrators would love to say, well, we're spending all this town money on housing, so if we put it into the general fund, I'm sure part of it will be used for housing. So I do think I would like that to be more specific.
I threw that into the considerations there. And Delegate Harder, one thing that I would like to mention for the committee, note, the goal with creating this list is this list lays out, a lot of what advocates of housing have asked for. But the main thing here in terms of local control is we're using the language of other purposes authorized by law for affordable housing trusts or year-round housing trusts or housing entities, because that's the same language that all the home rule petitions that have gone to the legislature have asked, because that is essentially a catch-all. Like housing trust can, have deed restrictions, and a housing trust can rehabilitate affordable homes. It can also do a lot more housing related stuff. So we don't want to limit at the county what the housing trust can do. We just want to say whatever state law allows housing trusts to do, you can do with this money, which is the most flexible kind of language we could give them, and that's exactly what the towns have asked in their own home rule petition.
Terrific. Any delegates have questions about this section? I see nothing. All right, question 5. So I'm worried that I'm getting a lot of questions about this. Because some people think it would be fair if we make it apply to everyone and not set the threshold at 1 million. I happen to think that's not fair. I think if people have a house that's worth less than $1 million in this market, then they should not have to pay a transfer fee. And I know that some towns think $1 million is too much. Some towns think $1 million is too little. So we could take the threshold out, but I would really prefer not to. Any comments, delegates? Tell me what you think, please. Delegate Gallagher.
If someone were to bring that up to me, I would simply remind them that this is about equity, not equality.
Nicely said. I like that. All right, and everybody else, okay. I mean, I know, people think luxury is not 1 million anymore, and it's true compared to, but, and we can always take the word luxury out, but I think, Delegate Gallagher said it beautifully. Delegate Green.
I just wanted to ask a question. If we allowed the towns to make that choice themselves, I mean, would that pose it unequal situations? And I just don't know. I mean, if that would be a problem or not. So I'm just asking the question.
I think it would lead to inequality if towns could set their own. Delegate Gessen, what do you think?
I think not. I mean, by this point, if there's a local option transfer fee, some towns are going to have no transfer fee. Some towns are going to have a transfer fee, but that's not a unique thing. Like some towns might have, different thresholds, different rates, but towns have different property tax laws. Towns have different sales tax. Some towns have a restaurant meals tax. Some towns don't. And some towns put an additional fee on Airbnb. Some towns don't. A matter like this, it's not rare to have different towns have different policies. That's really a decision of what towns want to incentivize and what towns want to raise revenue for what purposes. And that's really why it shouldn't be something decided here at the assembly. Even though we're elected by individual communities, these are very significant questions for communities to make up their minds about. One of the things might be if every town around us has a transfer fee, rate at this percentage, we want to drop it by a little bit because we want to incentivize the sale of homes and we don't need housing revenue. That very well much could be a conversation that happens, but that conversation should happen on the town meeting floor, not on the assembly. And that's why I think leaving things flexible, not having the assembly tell people this is a rate, this is the percentage, this is the threshold, is going to make it a lot more fair because the same way, towns aren't equitable in their percentages and their taxes, they're also not the same, right? Falmouth, $1 million home looks a lot different than a $1 million parking space in Provincetown. Like like towns are different. It doesn't pose a legal issue.
That answer your question, Delegate Green?
So what is Delegate Gessen recommending, that we eliminate this or that we make it more flexible?
No.
I think we keep it at $1 million and then we let towns go above it if they want to.
Above it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not below it is what you're saying.
Not below it. I think I haven't heard a single complaint from any community that $1 million is not low enough, aside from individuals that I've heard say they just want to create a transfer fee period.
Right.
But
All right.
And-
Thank you.
And also, if you see, well, you can't see what I'm pointing at on my screen. The first million of the sale price of the home will not be subject to the fee.
Right,
So, if you sell your house for $1,200,000, you're paying the fee on the $200.
right. But,
Because we don't want to penalize people in this economy. Pretty much everybody's going to be selling for $1 million. So, we don't want them to have to pay on that whole price. Does that make sense?
oh, I understand the logic, and I would tend to agree with the, with, number 5 in its entirety. But I'm just thinking, trying to think about every option in every town. So I just was trying to ask that question. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Anybody else? Question 6, topic 6. So again, we want to give towns as much flexibility as they want. Some towns have only asked for, 0.5%. Other towns want 4. In fact, some want higher, but so we've decided to ask for anything between 0.5 and 4%, and that way that's up to the towns. Any problems with that? Okay. So then question 7 is where people have a lot of issues that I've been hearing about, which are exemptions. And the list that Delegate Gessen has put on in this framework are the exemptions that must occur. That you can't charge the fee if you're donating your house to a church, things like that. And then allow towns to adopt additional exemptions. Towns may not want to charge this to first-time buyers. Some towns may not want to charge it for military members. Towns could decide any other exemptions they want. The list here is just the legal ones. Delegate Gallagher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That does raise a question that I think we haven't addressed in this document, which is whether the fee is to be paid by the buyer or the seller.
I'm glad you mentioned that. When the meetings we've been having about this, it was always assumed that it would be on the buyer. And then for the first time last week, I heard somebody say, no, we want it on the seller. And so we decided it doesn't need to go in here because again, that's up to the town. Let the town decide whether they want it on the buyer or the seller, as long as it's reported to the Registry of Deeds. I think the town can decide. Delegate Gessen, what do you think?
So could I say then that if that is in fact our position, that we should state that explicitly, that we would leave it up to the town to determine whether the fee would be paid by the buyer or the seller?
Okay.
And one other option to that I would ask the committee if they think is worthwhile is some forms of legislation that are currently filed in front of the State House offer that even the town won't determine, but rather the fee is owed. The transfer of the deed, in order for it to occur, the fee must be paid. It is up to the buyer or the seller to pay the fee, and it's up to them to figure out how they want to do. If the seller of a house wants to simply make them seem more marketable by incorporating the fee into, the sale price of the home and then paying it and good to go, great. Or if the buyer wants to pay the fee, they can do it, and to really leave it up to each individual transaction, as long as, and as far as the county is concerned, the fee just gets paid. That's an option that's been discussed. I really have no preference at all, but I want to mention that is something that some legislation has considered.
Thoughts? Delegate Gallagher.
So I raise it specifically because it will come up in instances where there is a sale to an exempt institution, an exempt buyer. If the buyer is tax exempt, then it would be understandable that, no, I'm sorry, if the buyer is exempt, it would be understandable that the fee would be waived. If however, the fee, if it's incumbent on the seller to pay the fee.
Oops, you just muted yourself, hon. Excuse me, hon. Delegate.
I'm sorry,
There
yes,
you
I
go.
muted myself, stupid. How much did you hear or not hear?
We lost you at the very end.
Yeah,
Okay, if
we
it's
got
incumbent
through
on-
who,
If it's incumbent on the seller to pay the fee, then the exempt status of the buyer is not relevant.
right. Or maybe what do you think, Delegate Gesson? Maybe it would be any
To
either
the point
side.
that, like, it might make sense for us to articulate in the recommendation either way. It's just good practice. I agree. But on the question of, if the buyer is exempt and the seller is the one paying the fee, I mean, the seller would still have an incentive to not pay the fee and to articulate that, they're selling to someone who's exempt. So I think you could still have an exemption. I don't think that kills the ability to have an exemption. And one more thing that I think is worth mentioning in this that we were discussing is this point right here of placing the burden of demonstrating the exemption on the person requesting the exemption. This is just something that exists in the legislation that was filed in the State House, where if, let's say, I'm a church and I'm buying property and I don't want to pay the fee, or the seller doesn't want to pay the fee because they're exempt, the Registry of Deeds isn't going to have employees dedicated to investigating who's exempt and who's not. Like that would be an administrative burden on them, and we don't want to do that. Rather, if you're exempt, let's say you're buying a property from a family member, or you're buying a property as a church, you simply just sign an affidavit under those circumstances attesting to the fact that you are exempt for this reason under penalty of perjury. File that when you apply for the deed to get transferred, and there's no administrative hassle in that. It's the burden's on you to say you're exempt. So like the idea there is just to save that effort, so we're not investigating each and every single one of these at the expense of the taxpayers.
Does that sound good to everyone? Okay. There's anything else? Oh, that was 7, right? Cool beans. So, so we are at, are we really? No. Yeah. So we are at, question 8, and this is where the fun is. What would the county want to do with regional funds? And right now we explain how the funds would be distributed through a fund just like the Clean Water Fund, where the towns who are participating, each town, one vote, would decide, would look at applications and decide what they thought was a good idea to spend money on. There are certain things that I think would be really, the one thing, as Dan mentioned before, there are some things that I think would be so much easier to do regionally. For example, one thing that I have always wanted, for the towns, because one of the barriers to people renting their homes year round is the fear that they're going to get someone in, it's going to turn out they're a nightmare, and they won't leave, and all that. So, one of the things that I would like personally to see the regional fund do is be able to run the Cory checks, and things on the potential renters and also the landlords, so that we know some nice kids from Russia over here to work aren't being abused. So that's one of my thoughts. And I just want to know other people's, that's the example of what I'm sort of thinking for regional. So what are everybody else's opinions?
One thing I'll say is, I hear that, and like, you know, when I brought this up to my affordable housing commission in Falmouth, the pushback I got is like, why is the county keeping something for retail money? We know how to spend our money, right? So I think if we move forward with something regional, we're gonna hear that pushback. There's no way we structure a regional initiative where the people that are gonna get less money, even if it is, you know, only 10% out of 100 less, aren't going to say, yeah, but we want the full 100. Like, we're going to hear that no matter what we do. My take on it is, we're a regional government. We're delegates here because we believe that some things, not everything, can get accomplished efficiently and well regionally. And I think at least 10% of the revenue that will be collected by the transfer fee could go towards regional initiatives that would benefit the entire case, right? Housing doesn't stop at the border of one individual town. People live in Falmouth, work in Bourne, and send their kids to school in Sandwich. Like, their housing who are taught by teachers that live in Harwich, right? Like, the housing doesn't stop at a single town border. I think there's good regional initiatives that could do it. So the question for me is, how do we structure it in a way that's fair to the town? Not do we do it or do we? At the same time, I'm always going to preface it with the fact that I believe in this regional transfer fee initiative. And if this is, you know, because of the town opposition or for any other reason, a deal breaker, not a hill I'm ever going to die on. I would rather get this transfer fee in with no money getting saved regionally than any money. But I do think it's a good idea. And last thing I'll say is there's a homes program that already exists. Every single town. So the county gets about, I think it's about 2 million. I could be wrong, but somewhere in that magnitude amount of money from the federal government for housing on the Cape every year. Every town has an individual appointed to the homes board that votes on how these projects are going to be used. They meet about once a month. Almost every town has appointed either their town manager or their housing coordinator for this role. And when I've spoken to my housing coordinator about this that serves on the board, she doesn't see it as a big hassle. It's actually an opportunity that she has to meet with other housing coordinators across the Cape once every couple months and talk about efforts that they're doing and toss holiday ideas. I assume if we were going to have a regional board like this that has the same structure, towns would probably appoint the same exact person that they have on the homes board. It's a pool of money dedicated to housing. So I don't see this as a big burden to have a volunteer board like this. And I think it's a fair way to approach it. It's my 2 cents on it. Definitely want to hear what other folks think.
And also, just as a thought, you know, we might find it's better to create, you know, have this be one committee with the Homes Act and regional fund be together. We may even want to include the shared regional services in it, because all the towns like that, and right now they pay for that. Maybe they wouldn't have to pay for it if that was being funded by the transfer fee. So just, these are all ideas to throw out. Delegate Green.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, again, so this is, I think something saying it's subject to a further analysis and in discussion. I think that really my town feedback is that they just want to understand how it can be equitable. As Delegate Gallagher says, we're really collaborating with other towns around us. Maybe that it's, I mean, I thought your towns were as well, but maybe it's just more evident where we are, with the housing situations that Delegate Gallagher was talking about. But we're already doing those kinds of things. So I just think that there should be some language in here where it says further analysis and discussion, to further
Right.
define how this is done equitably. That's all.
Thank you. Thoughts, Delegate Gallagher? Apparently.
Simply that this is what's happening in practice, even in the absence of a regional board.
Right.
The towns are cooperating with one another, and
So,
the projects I'm most familiar with in Orleans, Eastham, Wellfleet, Provincetown. I'm not sure about Truro, but I just assume it's standard practice. There's always a lot of emphasis in affordable housing on making it for the community, meaning in Eastham that often means Eastham residents, but there's a little leeway about that. So, it's an ill-defined population. What exactly do we mean by the community? There's a little bit of fear of outsiders coming in and taking advantage, that sort of thing. But I think that people are pretty good at handling that. And in fact, it doesn't happen that much. We do have a problem with properties being bought up by outside interests, but it's not affordable housing that's being bought up by outside interests.
Another thing I'd like to throw out for discussion is my personal view is that I would hope that this money would be used by the towns for attainable housing, for the workforce housing, for the municipal housing, because that there is no money for. Affordable housing has all sorts of mechanisms to get funding, tax credits, this, that, 40B. But that's my personal hope. And as I said, we're not telling the towns what to do with it. But that's just my hope. Delegate Gessen, even though I thought you were up before Delegate Green.
My question, I want to hone in on like what language we can incorporate into this that would make it clear that this is not a done deal, and we want to have more discussion on this. So I'm all ears to what Delegate Green has to say, and then I'll come back and
Great.
and suggest.
Delegate Green.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chair Harder, about attainable housing. I mean, this is something I hear day in and day out from everyone, from the person who delivers my mail to the teachers, to even the physicians, this is such a big problem. I don't know if we could put something flexible in there, about further analysis and further definition, but also put some kind of a bullet point saying that we would, really encourage strategies about attainable housing.
Okay. So we wanted to change some language. Delegate Gessen, can you go back to the beginning of the document?
I was even going to suggest starting. Yeah, actually, yeah, absolutely. Let's go off to the top. Sorry. So this is my notes here break into two. the current language is no more than 10% of the funds collected from each town will be retained to offset the administrative cost. So would it be, I know Delegate Green, you were thinking about how to phrase this in a certain way to make it evident that we need to really discuss it more. What are your thoughts, Delegate Green? I'll just open it up to you, and then we can.
Okay.
How do we make
Through the
this
chair.
clear?
Through the chair, I mean, it's analysis as well. We should be getting the numbers from the registry as to,
Yep.
the town breakdown of the sales of houses maybe in the last, I mean, I know COVID's, skewed the numbers, but I mean, a reasonable number of years so that we know town by town, what the numbers were. So we can take a look at it and just see, in black and white, what property sold in what towns and for how much. And so we can analyze this. So, I mean, we know what 10% may look like. We know, what towns consistently had sales of over $1 million. So people aren't just guessing or fearing this or supposing that. I mean, we actually know what the numbers are. I think that would be helpful. Do you understand?
So would this?
saying?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I think that Delegate Gessen, that line could stop after projected revenues. Just say projected revenues and costs.
Cost of administration, I would say, yeah.
No,
I would honestly just,
no.
Oh.
We want that broken into two different sections, remember? Delegate Gallagher suggested that, which I think is a really good idea.
oh, okay. So
Remember that, we're
Engage.
talking,
engage to
Determine-
analyze projected revenues.
Let me write this out, and then we can change it just before I lose a thought. Precise percent to go,
No,
no,
because one of the things we want to analyze is how much money is this going to make us? I mean, I don't want
Yeah.
everybody getting all psyched and then finding out. I mean, I had a wonderful meeting with the woman who's now in charge of the Realtors Association, and she sent me an article that I think I passed on to everyone, but if not, I will. About the fact that Los Angeles thought they were going to make, over $1 billion, and I think they made like 500 million or something. They were sorely disappointed on how much they actually made. So I do believe
I've
to
worked with the
analyze-
registry to get some of that data, and maybe we can have Delegate Harder a future meeting of the committee where we sit down with the registry and parse through that data, because they have it accepted, and that's conversations we can have. But I want to make sure I get the language right, because
right. So we're talking about two different things, Delegate Gessen, is we're talking about, the amount of money that the registry has taken in is, as far as the sales in each town. And so we can analyze which ones are over $1 million and, town by town.
Sure.
And then we want to know the administrative costs. So we want to know them for the registry, and we want to know them for the county. Do you know what I'm saying?
right.
So those are the two things.
Okay,
so that does this address the first one?
Yeah, that probably would. I mean, that's broad enough.
And then the second, the committee will work to analyze the cost of these.
well, if we're
Yeah.
putting if we're putting the projected revenues on its own, then I think the pending additional information on administrative cost estimates from the registry would cover that second one, would it?
Either one works for me. I've got no preference either way. We could remove that and just keep this because it's a little more precise about who's doing the analyzing. Is that okay?
I would, okay, I like that. And then in the one above it, what if we just put, will be retained, no more than 10% of the funds collected from each town will be retained by the county pending discussion with the Registry of Deeds and county administration. Does
And
that,
then maybe we can put that in the last at the bottom. So pending
discussion with,
registry of deeds. Is that good?
Delegate Gallagher, what do you think?
Well, I think in this, it's not separated. And I would say something like the county will retain a reasonable amount to cover administrative fees. And then separate from that, I would say, in addition, no more than 10% of the funds collected will be allocated for regional housing initiatives.
Oh, you know what might make this a lot clearer? I think that's a great point. What if we forgot about regional housing initiatives in point 3? I think that's what's actually
Right.
driving us in circles here. What if
Yep.
we say the county will retain, a reasonable fee pending blah blah for administration, and then at the bottom when we get to point 8, we can say, the county, like, pending additional conversations, the county no more than 10%. In addition, inclusive of the administrative costs will be retained by the county for regional housing, and put that at the bottom, at the top, and like split those issues up.
I think that's an improvement.
okay,
Okay. I appreciate y'all watching me type this out. A little bit of pressure. Okay. So the committee will analyze projected revenues. Committee will work to analyze cost history.
so I think you just need to take out the second to last bullet point and then take out the regional, 4 regional housing initiatives in this last bullet point.
And I'll change no more than 10% to reasonable. Is it reasonable
Percentage.
Or I'll say small percent, because it will be small. As Gallagher said, it's going to be 1 to 3% range at most. Small percentage of funds collected from each town will be retained to offset the administrative costs pending said discussion with registry of county government. Is that good?
People happy? Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Great. What was
And
the,
then, do we jump to bullet point 8 real fast? That'll get harder,
Yep.
and close the loop on this before we go back to a buyer seller.
absolutely.
Oh, that works. Pending 8%. How's it?
Works for me. Anybody?
Terry, does that capture what you were thinking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. The copy editor in me is bristling at summed with,
I know.
but
I know. I was thinking
Me
that's
too.
the first round.
That's like legal.
it, inclusive of administrative costs.
Yes, it's how I see 10%.
Well, bad.
Okay.
No, and I want to commend you all for all your hard work. I mean, and really diligence and following through with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agree. Okay, last question we've got to tackle, I think, is buyer seller. Do we have a firm stance here, or do we want to leave it up to individual towns or individual transactions? How do we? What's the sentiment?
What if we say, it is up to individual towns to decide whether the buyer, seller, or what was the other one that we were, the buyer or the seller, but then what?
And or
Buyer and
like that they determine.
right.
May I jump in here?
Please, you're the
How about
writer.
just towns may determine whether the fee shall be paid by the buyer or the seller?
That's exactly what I was thinking. And big emphasis on may, because if towns don't want to determine, then they don't need to. So towns may determine. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, I like the may, because that way, if they want to just leave it up to the transaction. Beautiful. Does that make people happy? Okay.
Any further discussion on this at all? Sorry, that's not my question to ask. I'll get hurt.
No, those were the only changes that we wanted to see. That's all I have on my list. Did we miss anything? Are delegates happy with this being, with this as written? Okay, in that case, I am going to ask for a motion that we present this framework to the full assembly. Delegate Guess. Is that
I
number
move
strong?
that this becomes the Standing Committee on Economic Affairs recommends these recommendations to the full assembly for discussion.
Beautiful. Delegate Ty.
I second that motion. I also want, like, being quiet here. I did my homework. I read this over several times, and
Thank you.
I'm glad to say that certain highlights that I had made, you have answered for me. And I also want to reiterate about the work that was done on here. Thank you very much. And I gladly second this to be pressed on.
Thank all of you, because our work was based on the work you all did in getting us the questions, et cetera, et cetera. So I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All right. Clerk Fletcher, may I have a roll call vote, please?
You may, Madam Chair. Deputy Speaker Gasson? Think I heard you. I think that's a yes. Chair Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Green for Delegate Omen,
Yes,
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
and Delegate Gasson for the vacant spot that we
No,
currently have.
Delegate Gallagher.
Oh, I'm sorry. Too many G's. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, yes.
Been a long day. Yes. So I believe that's unanimous, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for doing this. I know it was quick, no, not much notice, but I wanted a very transparent process so that people will know when we hand this to the full assembly how we got here. So if nobody else has anything to say other than thank you, Ian and Clerk Fletcher, Delegate Gessen.
I just wanted to say thank you to the committee. I know we've been talking about this for a long time on the assembly now. And I mean, we declared a housing crisis in April. And sometimes it feels like these conversations can be circular when we bring up the same points and people, bring up similar concerns and we just kind of go over back and forth time and time again. I think, however, all those conversations proved to be super helpful. We wouldn't be in this place and have this kind of framework if we hadn't heard from dozens of people coming to the assembly, delegates each individually and together, voicing a lot of these concerns. So thank you to everyone here for helping make those conversations happen. And this is finally one of those things that we can point to as a stake in the ground. We've made progress, and I'm looking forward to working with this committee to scrolling through a shared screen that actually has a transfer fee home rule petition drafted on it in the near future, so we can take a pen to that and make something that we can be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Green.
and I just want to say thank you to the people at this meeting and all the people that have worked on this so hard. I mean, and I want to shout out to Chair Harder. She's been working on this issue for so long that I just feel very gratified to be here to be on this committee as an alternate and take part in moving this forward. And I commend you all very much, but a big hurrah for Chair Harder. Thank you.
Aw, thank you. All right. If I was gonna fix the lights and then I figured, it's Halloween. So anyway, if nobody else wants to chime in on anything, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
Righty, Clerk Fletcher, please.
Chair Harder,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Yeah.
Delegate Green for Delegate Omen,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
and Delegate Gallagher for the vacancy.
Yes.
All right, that's everyone, Madam Chair.
Thank you all so much.
Thank
See you
you.
next week. Happy
Thank you.
Halloween.